Some time ago, Margaret Mead was asked when she thought civilization began. She estimated it was 15,000 years ago, and she based the estimate on the finding of a male femur, a 15,000-year-old male femur that had been broken and had healed. And she said this was a man who couldn't hunt, he couldn't fight, couldn't take care of himself, so he was taken care of by others. And she considered this to be the dawn of compassionate care, which she also considered to be the dawn of civilization. What I want to do in this talk is ignite our natural, already always existing capacity for compassion, which has been with us since the dawn of civilization, and especially in the presence of problematic human behavior. Some of the greatest members of the human species have exhibited significant compassion in the presence of problematic behavior, perhaps the best example of which comes from the Bible, in which we're told that Christ exhibited compassion towards his persecutors by saying, "Father, forgive them, they know not what they're doing." Or Martin Luther King, who was stabbed in the chest by a young schizophrenic woman when he was 28 years old. He almost died. And as he convalesced in the hospital, his primary concern was for the welfare of the person that stabbed him. Or Nelson Mandela, who exhibited significant compassion towards the architects of apartheid. Or Father Edward J. Flanagan, who founded Boys Town, where I work, the best-known program in the world for troubled out-of-home adolescents. Father Flanagan came to Omaha at the turn of the 20th century, and the city was heavily populated by orphaned or homeless boys. They ran in packs. Some of them were thugs and thieves. They dressed in rags. They were filthy. And they were doing whatever they had to do to survive in the streets, some bad things. And so people thought they were very bad boys. But Father Flanagan got up on his soapbox, which was very large because he was a public relations genius, and he said to the world, "There's no such thing as a bad boy. Only bad environment, bad modeling, and bad teaching. In other words, bad circumstances. These are boys to whom a lot of bad things have happened. As a result, they've learned to do bad things just to survive in this life. What we're going to do now is we're going to show them some compassionate care, and we're going to do good things for them, and we're going to teach them how to do good things to survive in this life." And in taking that stand, Father Flanagan ushered into the world what I consider to be the circumstantial view of problematic behavior. When we take circumstances into account, we naturally feel more compassionate towards problematic behavior. I'll give you an example drawn from the internet. Imagine that you're late for work one morning and you're in a hurry. You come up to a busy intersection, light's red, but you feel lucky because there's only one car in front of you. And then ultimately the light turns green, but the car in front of you doesn't budge, just sits there. And you look up there and you see there's a woman in the driver's seat, but she's not even looking out the window of her car. She doesn't even know the light's green. She's looking into the back seat. And then the light turns yellow and red, and you sit through another revolution. And finally it turns green, but the car still doesn't budge, just sits there. And you look up there and you see she's still not looking out the window of her car. She still doesn't know the light's green. She's still looking into the back seat. And then the light turns yellow and red again, and maybe you get angry enough to go up and find out what's going on. You knock on her window, she looks up at you, and she has tears in her eyes. And you look into the back seat, and you see there's a baby back there, and it's turning blue. And in that instant, our anger, or frustration, irritation, anything we might have been experiencing along those lines would be gone, and what would take its place is some compassion for her and a desire to help that baby. And there's a whole science that has been developed around this way of thinking, this circumstantial way of thinking. It's called behavior analysis. The fastest growing behavioral science in the world. It has a foundational idea. And this foundational idea is very compatible with Father Flanagan's view, very compatible with the baby in the back seat view. There's a sense is there's always a baby in the back seat. There's always a set of circumstances that are functionally related to the problematic behavior. And when we see them, we tend to have a more compassionate view of that problem. This science has an idea that's very similar in that it attributes the source of problematic behavior not to the misbehaving person, him or herself, but to what has happened to the person over the course of their life up to the exhibition of the problem. As a result, it doesn't seek to fix the blame. It seeks to fix the problem. It's very easy on the person, very easy on the world, very hard on the problem, and everything it touches improves. Everything it touches improves. It's done more for people that reside in one-tailed the normal distribution than any idea ever invented by mankind. It's brought them out of the dark ages they've lived in for millennia, out and under the bright lights that shine on your life and my life. And amen to that, brother and sister. It's emptied the human warehouses where these folks used to live, these institutions. People used to go into these institutions see people living there engaged in weird behavior all day, what was called institutional behavior, and they think, believe, or say, well, this is where they belong. They're exhibiting institutional behavior all day. They should be in an institution. And people endowed with that Father Flanagan way of thinking, the baby in the back seat way of thinking, the behavior analytic way of thinking came along and said, no, that's not right. The reason they're engaged in institutional behavior all day is because they're in an institution all day. Get them out of the institution and into more normalized circumstances, they'll start exhibiting more normalized behavior, which is exactly what happened. So what I'm advocating for here is a more circumstantial perspective. Let me give you an example from here in Omaha, Boys Town, where I work. Boys Town is a city within a city, and when you set foot on the campus of Boys Town, you're setting foot on the safest patch of ground in Omaha. And yet you'd be surrounded with more lawbreakers than you would be anywhere else in the state of Nebraska unless you toured a prison system or you went into a juvenile detention facility. And yet there are no walls, no fences, no locked doors, no armed security guards, and virtually no crime. How's that possible? Well, it's possible because of the transformative effect of circumstances. The young boys and girls that live at Boys Town came from very difficult circumstances. They started exhibiting very difficult behavior in those circumstances. We bring them to our campus. They start exhibiting exactly the opposite kind of behavior. And there's a small subset of these kids that tend to be hardened and controlling and manipulative. And you might get the idea there's something wrong with them morally or characterologically, or something wrong with their personality, or something wrong with their psyche. But we look around for the baby in their back seat. We look for the circumstances behind the problematic behavior they're showing us, and we find them. These kids tend to be a little on the anxious side. And people that are anxious, for them, some commodities that you and I might take for granted are very much in short supply. Those commodities involve a sense of certainty in one's life and a sense of control over that life. We examine the lives of these kids, we find out they had neither of those. They're bounced from foster home to foster home, unpredictably. Their parents come in and out of the picture unpredictably. Abuse comes in and out of the picture unpredictably, and they have no sense of certainty, no sense of control, and so they become hardened. They become controlling, and they become manipulative. But after they live with us for a while, they soften, and they become children again, which again is the transformative effect of circumstances. So what I'm pointing to here, what I'm emphasizing here, is the role of circumstances that are related to problematic behavior. Right now in this world, there's a ubiquitous, universal set of circumstances. It's everywhere and it's nowhere. You can't point to it, you can't touch it, you can't look at it. You can't control it, you can't escape it, and it's affecting everybody adversely. Nobody's at their best. Nobody's at their best. People are acting out, they're lashing out. They're quicker to anger, slower to cool off. They're quicker to point the finger of blame, slower to take responsibility. They're troubled and troubling. What's needed more than ever is more understanding, more acceptance, more tolerance, more compassion. So how do you do that? How do you spontaneously generate compassion? Well, I have a recommendation. I have a couple of recommendations. The next time somebody behaves obnoxiously around you or towards you, they cut you off in traffic, or they cut you off in line, or they cut you off in conversation. They give you that look, or they give you that tone, or they use those words, or they get on your case for wearing a mask, or they get on your case for not wearing a mask. You'll have a reaction, almost certainly, an emotional reaction. Have it, but don't act it out. Instead, just take a couple of deep breaths. Let them out more slowly than you took them in. And then ask yourself, really ask yourself, what is the baby in this person's back seat? Or what else could this mean? What could be going on in the life of this person to have them behave that way? And come up with one plausible set of circumstances that could account for it. And in that instant, you'll have created some compassion. And you can take it a step further. You could take it a step further by being kind towards them. See, we have mirror genes. We tend to mirror the way we're treated. If we're treated hostilely, we tend to respond hostilely. If we're treated defensively, we tend to respond defensively. If we're treated kindly, it increases the probability we ourselves will behave more kindly. So if we're kind towards those folks that are being obnoxious towards us, we increase the probability they may in turn be kind to us or kind to others, but there's even a bigger dividend for us. When we're kind to people that are not being kind to us, we end up being kinder and more compassionate towards ourselves. Who doesn't need that? Who couldn't use a little more of that in life right now? Because everybody is suffering. Everybody is suffering. It's time to go easy. It's time to go easier on the world and on misbehaving others. We all want to make the world a better place. I think that's a safe assumption. Here's a surefire way to do that. Become a better person. Become a better person, and you'll have made the world a better place by at least one person. And here's a surefire way to do that. Be more compassionate towards misbehaving others. And here's a surefire way to do that. Take a circumstantial view of their problematic behavior. And what you'll have done is brought some compassion into the world, made it a better place, and you'll also be joining the company of some of the greatest human beings that ever lived. Thank you very much.